When I was doing a little editing this morning for this absolutely gorgeous loaf of Irish soda bread, I noticed that I made a little bit of a mistake when I was talking to you in the recipe. I said that I was adding some all-purpose flour and some white flour, when in fact I was adding some all-purpose flour and some whole wheat flour. You can do completely all-purpose if you want. I was adding half all-purpose and half whole wheat. Forgive my little mistake in the video. Just do your thing, follow the recipe, and have fun. Good morning and welcome back to the kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make Irish soda bread, which means no yeast. That's right, no yeast. So simple, so easy, anybody can do it. So what you're going to need today is 1 3/4 cups of whole wheat flour and 1 3/4 cups of white flour. Now if you only have an all-purpose white flour, don't sweat it, it's going to be fine. You're going to need 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 tablespoons of cold butter, cut and cubed. So what I like to do is, before I start getting into my recipe, cut up my butter, throw it in my fridge, and then when I'm ready for it, it's nice and cold. So I keep it in the fridge till I'm ready to go. You're also going to need 1 egg, 1 2/3 cups of buttermilk. Now, buttermilk I know can be hard to find sometimes, especially here in Canada. So if you don't have buttermilk, just use whatever milk you have in the house. And with that, you're going to need 1 1/2 tablespoons of either lemon juice or white vinegar, and I'll show you how that's done. Easy peasy. And you're also going to need 1 tablespoon of oats. I don't care if you have quick cooking oats. I don't care if you have regular traditional oats. Just don't use the steel cut oats, because that's not going to be so nice when you eat the bread. You're also going to need a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And if you don't have parchment paper, just sprinkle some flour on there. The whole thing is that we don't want the bread to stick to our baking sheet, because this is going to be kind of a sticky dough. Somewhat. Get your oven going at 425, and first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a buttermilk substitute. So in here I've got my milk. Now all we have is skim milk in the house, so that's what I'm going to use is my skim milk. And I have lemon juice. So all I'm going to do is put my 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice in my milk. Going to give it a quick mix up, and I'm just going to lay it to the side. That's going to curdle my milk, and that's what we want, is we want that soured milk for this bread. So push that to the side, let it go for a few minutes, ignore it. Let's move on to the actual dough. So into my bowl I'm going to add 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to add my 1 3/4 cups of white flour. And I'm going to get my, gotta think about this, salt. Give it a sprinkle around. I am going to add my baking soda. So here's the trick with baking soda. When you measure it out, you don't want any extra baking soda in here, because you're going to taste it in the bread if you do add more. So you don't want that big heaping teaspoon. Take your teaspoon, put your baking soda in it, and then take your finger and run it across the top to make sure you have a very level spoon of baking soda. You don't want to taste it, it's gross. Too much, gross. Okay, so we're going to put that in here, and what we're going to do is get our cold butter out of the fridge. And I've already chunked it up in little bits, and I'm just going to put it right into this mixture. And with my hands, I don't even need a spoon for this. And yes, they have been scrubbed. You guys know the routine by now, right? Clean hands is a must, especially in the kitchen. So all I'm going to do is start mixing this with my fingers. So I'm going to take my little bits of butter that I put in there, and I'm just breaking them up. So all I'm doing is kind of moving it between fingers, so that when the final mix is done here, or when I've got all the butter incorporated, it's going to kind of look like fine breadcrumbs. You can also take your mix, put it through your hands like this, but it is a little messy. So it's up to you how you want to do it. Either way, it's going to work. So we're just going to incorporate our butter into here. And while you're incorporating the butter, you're also mixing in all the other ingredients into the flour that you did add earlier. So, like I say, you don't even need a spoon. So easy and so good. When I was in Ireland a few years ago with some dear friends, the Irish soda bread won my heart. It was so good over there. Okay, so basically I have incorporated everything, and all I'm going to do, so I've just got a really fine mixture, little bits of butter going through, and as you can see, it's just a really fine breadcrumby mixture. So I'm going to make a well in the center of this, and we're going to move over to our milk. And in that quick of a time span, my milk is already soured. Very easy to see. You'll see the curdling happening. And I'm just going to grab a fork because I need to add an egg. So I guess we don't need a spoon, but we do need a fork. Take one of my beautiful eggs that come from my friend who has a farm down the road. Of course, fresh eggs are a treat, right? So I'm very lucky. So I'm just going to put my egg right into that buttermilk. You probably should crack it in a bowl first, but me being me, I didn't. So let's give this a quick mix into our milk. And that's all you need. We're now going to take the milk mixture and add it to the center where we made that well. Now you're just going to take your hands, and with a very light hand, you're going to start mixing. You don't want to be squeezing things. Just use your fingers and just kind of start incorporating things. So just mixing it around. It is going to be a wet dough. You may even have to add a little bit more milk by the time it's all done. But at the beginning, let's see how it works. So all I'm doing, as you can see, it's a really wet dough, and I'm just taking my fingers and moving them around just to get everything incorporated. This won't take long. And the whole thing that you want to achieve here is a clean bowl. So you know your dough is ready when your bowl is starting to come clean on the sides. So as you can see, my dough is starting to really come together. So I'm just going to keep mixing. And in a couple of minutes here, we're going to dump this out onto a floured surface. Okay. So actually my dough is really sticky. When I did this the other day, my dough was really dry. Who knows? No rhyme or reason. I may actually add a little bit more flour to this. And I mean a smidge. You don't want to overwork this dough because you don't want gluten formation like you do in a regular bread. So there's no kneading of this dough. It's not necessary, and it'll take your product and turn it into something you really don't want. So let's get this cleaned up. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little flour on my surface. Okay. And as you can see, my dough has come together and my bowl is fairly clean. Let's get those bits. It is a sticky dough, but see, my bowl is fairly clean. Let's just move that over. I am going to use a little bit more flour only because my dough is so sticky this morning. You don't want to knead it. All I'm going to do is start shaping. And let's get those sticky bits off of our hand because it's going to make shaping this a little bit more difficult. And you can also add some flour to your hand, and that helps with the sticky. All right, so I've got the most of it off my hands. Just going to grab a quick piece of paper towel so I can get the rest off, or the majority of it off, so that it's just a little bit easier for me to work with. So we've got this dough that's sitting here on our counter, and all we're going to do is start shaping. And it will come together, I promise. Very little shaping is actually needed in this dough because it is going to come together so easily. As you can see, I'm going to add a little more flour to my surface just because it is sticking, and I want to be able to move that dough easily. And a little more on my hands. Okay, so we've got this lovely circle of dough, and all we're going to do at this point is flatten it. I want it to be about 8.5 inches across, and I know from here to here is roughly 8 inches. I'm not going to get a ruler. You can if you want. I don't think it's necessary. And I also want to keep it about 1 inch to 1.5 inches high. So that's going to be it. And when I spread my fingers, I'm a little shy of 8 inches, but that's okay. It's not going to make a difference. What I'm going to do now is take this beautiful dough, because you should feel it. It actually feels like a beautiful dough. And I'm going to transfer it to my baking sheet. So I have parchment paper on my baking sheet, and I'm just carefully going to pick up my dough and move it over to my parchment paper. From here, I want to add a glaze. So I don't really want to waste an egg to beat up and make a glaze. So I do have a little bit of that milk left in my bowl, and I mean a little bit. So I'm just going to take my hands, and we're going to use what's left in here to put that glaze on our loaf. And you will be amazed how that little bit of milk goes a very, very long way. I'm also at this point going to take a sharp knife, and I'm going to score the loaf, because true Irish soda bread, you really should score it, because it has to be given a blessing. And how they do it in Ireland is usually the sign of the cross, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. So basically you're going to make an X in your bread. And then what you want to do, so once the X is made, as you can see, I have an X made in the bread. In each section of that X, you're going to put a little slit. And why are we going to put a little slit? Because we have to release the fairies. That's why we're going to put the little slit. We don't want those mischievous fairies in there causing us issues. So it's better to release them and let them go. We're going to take our rolled oats, put it over the top, and voila, this beauty is going to go in the oven. You want to cook this at 425 degrees for 15 minutes, and then you're going to drop your oven back to 400 and cook it another 30 minutes. You're going to want to get that solid, I can't even talk this morning. Apparently the snow that's happening outside is affecting my brain. You're going to want to get the hollow sound when you tap the bottom, and you're going to want a really beautiful golden crust on this. You also do not want to open the oven door. That is imperative. This bread needs to be left alone in the oven, and I know I am bad for wanting to peek in and see how things are happening. You cannot open your oven door for the duration of the cooking on this bread, or you'll release the steam and heat, and the bread is not going to do what it needs to do. So be patient, put it in your oven, set your temperature, set your timers, And this is going to be a good test of your patience. Do not open that oven door. I will see you when this is cooked, and I'll show you what the finished loaf is going to look like. Wasn't that easy? You should see what's happening in my oven. This is absolutely beautiful. Just a second. Let me get this and show you. Check this out. How beautiful is this? Let me just put it on this hot pad. Absolutely gorgeous. How do we know it's cooked? Quite easy. We're going to do we want that hollow sound in our bread. Absolutely, we have it. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Put it on our cooling rack. It's a little hot. Absolutely, completely and utterly gorgeous. It's going to be very, very hard on the outside. That's exactly what we want. This is a beautiful crusty bread. Do not cut this while it's hot. So what's going to happen is the bread will continue to cook inside. So sometimes with breads like this, they will be gummy if you cut them when they first come out of the oven. Let this cool. I would say let it cool to just about completely cool before you cut it. It's going to be fabulous with soups, stews, anything really, sandwiches, toast. It's multi-purpose. I don't know what else to say. I'm so happy with this loaf of bread. It's absolutely gorgeous. It rose beautifully without yeast. And as you can see, who wouldn't be proud to serve this to their family or to gobble it up themselves? So that's Irish soda bread. You can add cinnamon and raisins, cranberries. Make your own variation. You've got the basic recipe now. Have fun with it. It's delicious. It's easy. It smells amazing. And it's going to taste so good. Give it a try. And don't forget to send me pictures of your beautiful creations. Happy baking!